Hey guys, Mustache Tom here to review the movie Jackpot. Now, I've seen the trailer for this about twice before officially checking it out. Uh, and so we're just gonna dive right in, as objectively as possible. So the movie takes place not too long from now, I suppose, 2 years later in 2026, or at least the beginning narration does, referring to how things have gone into a deeper repression of sorts. However, to compensate for that, they were willing to hold off these jackpots, as it were. Ways to make easy money. The catch is, to make that said easy money, is that there will be a bounty placed on a person, and they must survive for the allotted time, and to whoever kills that person, they win the jackpot. But, on the contrary, if that said person survives for said allotted time, they instead win the jackpot. So someone is always going to win in the allotted time, or not. Now, I will say that the time between the one we see at the initial beginning of our movie to the one that gets set up is a little bit on the fast side. So, there is that. Now, I don't know if this movie was in any way inspired by the movies of, oh man, I'm blanking on the franchise now. It's the one that got... It's the one with the 24-hour curfew thing, and then if you're out on the streets, people can kill each other for whatever... in whatever way they want to. And it's more of a horror, political movie thing going on there. This leans a lot more into comedy slash action. So, we do begin the movie in 2030, so sometime later after said narration. So this has been going on about for 4-ish years, this jackpot system, though they portray it as even longer than that, so there's already some inconsistencies, at least in the visuals and the actual, lore that they set up in the beginning, so we're already off to a pretty bad start in terms of just keeping things consistent. But I mean, it's not a terrible premise. It's, dare I say, a little bit interesting. Anywho, we do begin our movie following this man who is the current jackpot runner, and he initially seems to be doing quite a good job. He breaks into a home where this granny takes advantage, illing ignorance, to have him lower his guard so that she can get the killing blow. She wins, she tries to play favor to get a little extra, but that's not how it works. And the next jackpot, as I was referring to, only takes place 18 hours later. So not even a full... So that would... If there was one of these every single day, I mean... your population numbers would probably look a lot less favorable, if anything. Anywho, so we meet our main character, played by Aquafina, who plays Katie Kim. She is on a bus as we first see her, and she's arriving in LA where this takes place. This allotted law, as it were. So we learn that she is in the context of the movie, an actress, which she is, in the meta sense as well, but she pretends to be a cop but for a moment to get this man to stop, like, sort of degrading his own daughter in a way for failing something or other. Point being is that in her process in moving to LA, she loses a watch, and then we briefly cut to Mr. One John Cena, who plays Noel, I believe. Yep. Who has this little custom gun thing going on, and we don't know what the deal with that is quite yet. So, as she's on the bus and as people are prepping for the next lottery, our main character is not quite savvy to the whole situation of what this lottery day is. So, she gets out, and goes to a place where she meets her landlord, I guess I'll call her. And in the process, this landlord has a boyfriend, I believe it is, in this context, Dame DJ. As we later follow our main character, Katie, she proceeds to go to an acting gig to help, to potentially get a job. And capitalism has become so bad at this point that you have to pay to get an audition. Now, usually that's not how it works right now, but considering that there is, fair criticisms to make about capitalism, I think that's a quite fine one to make, that even getting opportunities in the future would cost money. I think that's a pretty good gag, or commentary, potential commentary, if you will, on the state of things. And considering how hard things are now, I'm not gonna say it's even out of the realm of possibility. I mean, it's already hard enough to get a job, as the current stance is, even without, all this nonsense in the form of this movie. Anywho, so, she's wearing someone else's clothes at this point, I believe that is the case, and she has a ticket in her pocket. She accidentally activates it, I guess, for the plot to even continue, so there's that load of nonsense. And that makes her the current jackpot person, as it were. As she leaves the audition, the people there remaining see that she is the current jackpot. They get little updates on their phones, and they begin to try to assault her, with her not being really having the wherewithal of what's actually happening right now. So she manages to get out of there and get herself into further situations, from getting into a fight, a martial arts sort of area, and then like a next door sort of yoga, I guess it would be. And these two different groups both try to attack her, as she's continuously confused, and in pops, abruptly, John Cena's character. How he finds her, another question that's just left on the convenience scale. He just finds her. So, there are already 3 conveniences to have this movie even going. And I will say, the character work isn't as bad as I was expecting. They do take some time a little bit later on to flesh out both of these characters. But, and that is, that is to be encouraged in terms of writing. But, you want to at least also make sure that you're, getting from point A to point B is also, not hopefully relying on such heavy convenience or just happening to arrive in a location just because you need the plot to continue. At any rate, he picks her up, and doesn't really fill her in, so, she just assumes that he's another attacker among the mob, but he insists on sort of saying that the first few saves are free, and then that he will offer a protection service for a slice of the percentile of whatever, because of capitalism on top of that. Because of course. So anyways, she's still very confused, and during this, they're getting to the car, and he has a terrible time explaining what exactly is happening. He even stalls a bit here. Purposefully so? I'm not really sure what the dialogue here is. It's really sloppy, and not comedic whatsoever. It's it's your time to exposit information for her and for us, the audience. I mean, sure, we know as the audience that she became the target, but she does not know. She needs to be informed. And that gets delayed as they now get chased by bikers for quite a bit. And he's, again, briefing her a little bit throughout this chase. The bikers don't give up for quite a while. So we have a meaty biker chase scene. During their exit of the vehicle that gets totally trashed, she breaks his nose, and he readjusts it after the fact. So she runs off to the cops, assuming that they will be on her side. Lo and behold, they are just as much on the will of getting the jackpot as anyone else in this town, or this area of LA, for the time allotted. So they attempt to attack her as well. So he defends, and she finally gets away from everybody. Ends up in this wax house where this one guy who's manning it, actually he's you know what, get in, I'll protect you or whatever. So the first or the second nice person in the movie, I guess, in regards to everything that's been happening to her. So she's allotted in. However, the landlord calls her because she's also now on the hunt for this jackpot, and she also, for plot convenience, happens to now be a lot closer to where she is now, where our Katie is now, than where she was beforehand. So I throw up my hands for convenience number 4. We are really counting those up just to get to that character stuff that happens a little bit later on. So, so she moves inside this wax, I guess, sort of exhibition, and she must fend herself off from the two of them, her landlord and the boyfriend of said landlord, and does so adequately enough. And with the sort of Jones picking up her location and reinforming everyone that she's currently here, she once again gets picked up by a convenient return of one Mr. Cena, or Lewis. So, they get in a car, and they head off. She picked off a location where there would be a panic room, so they go to his house. They try to play it a little off, but then she uses force, or the potential for force, using a gun, to get into said panic room. They have a sit down, and this is the moment where we finally have the opportunity to breathe. And he begins saying a lot of his information, where he's from, and then is trying to lift up her spirits using an analogy to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which has gone through quite a few iterations. In fact, its current season, I believe its season finale is already done, if I'm not mistaken. So I could do a review about that if anyone would be interested. I'm not sure. Point being is that she talks about how her mom passed away and how her dad left her after she was a certain age, and that he could just take all the money that she got from being a child actor, because being a child actor, the parents usually hold on to the money. I think that's actually how it works currently, if I'm not mistaken. If anything. So yeah, there is that. So another criticism, and a pretty interesting one, that you never really think about when it comes to at least child actors, and how that works in terms of pay. Anyway, so the landlord grabs the owner of the house, gets the code. So, out of desperation, Lewis calls the super big company that is in charge of a bigger op on protecting people who are jackpotted, as it were. Enter Simu Leo, as Lewis. Apparently these two have a history, that being with Cena and Mr. Liu here. And thus, he offers a deal at a staggering 30% of cut, but she keeps finagling to get him in on it, that being Lewis, for a full 50 cut between the parties, I guess. Though I'm not sure how that works. Anyway, I don't know. So, they take a tour, and they get patched up a little bit here. And he goes on a little bit more about his lore, about how he was previously a mercenary. Which is, pretty typical thing for him to be typecast as. So, he talks about how he went on a raid with Lewis, and how they were the only two left, and how all this shit went down. And then she goes over about, as I mentioned, the whole thing with her mom, with the dad leaving and such. So it's a continuation of that part that we left off on. But as they continue their being on the inside of this location, Luis begins to be or Mr. Cena, whatever I want to call him, for simplicity's sake, gets suspicious of one Lewis, and suggests that this little operation is more of a honeypot. Though that's not typically, I guess that is technically what a honeypot could be, but I know that's not the only, you know, terminology or, you know, the main thing of what that means, but whatever. It still applies, technically speaking, in terms of definition, at any rate. So she's trusting in him, so she's trying to, you know, play it off, she has a disguise, by the way, at this point in the movie, offered by the company. So she kind of goes with him in terms of what this is, and thus leaves, because as they were going through this whole plan, they talked about how they were gonna throw all these 4 different decoy cars, and how she would be on this 5th different vehicle to escape. And he suggested what this honeypot was actually for was to operate enough of the business to get, you know, the deal in tow, and then murder said person for the additional jackpot money. So it's money on top of money, pretty much, is what their whole shtick is. So she's in one of the autopiloted cars, she turns it off, and gets ready to leave. However, somehow, Lewis has Noelle held up captive, and is offering to kill him if she does not return to a location of his choosing. So he chooses a Fiat, very fitting, I suppose. And at this point of the movie, it would appear that Katie actually has a few more additional fans of people who want her to survive, and a lofty number of people who still want to kill her for, well, the jackpot, obviously. So, she heads back, arrives, and what she does here does pose a bit of an interesting question, because she goes for a suicide attempt. She holds a weapon to her own head, and, you know, she uses her backstory as an actress in the context of the movie to really lend itself to be like, yeah, I'm actually going to do it, because I have nothing left. And during all of this, she is recording it using the phone that they gave her, by the by. She's streaming it to all the other people who are sort of catching up, as it were. So, that does pose a question. What would happen if someone actually did that? If someone actually did commit suicide during the jackpot? Does the money just go nowhere? Does it go to a person that the person knew? Who knows? It's completely vague. At least that specific thing, but it would appear that he also doesn't know, so this seems to be paying off. As he offers the key to near her, and she kicks him off the stage. In terms of movement, she got to a location where she could do such a thing. However, the other people are now beginning to catch up. In fact, they are now there. So she begins to go back to the middle while he's held, that being Lewis, and she begins to climb up with very little time left. I think it's like 30 minutes or less, or whatever at this point. So of course, the host, the landlord attempts to, for a third time, to kill her now. Unsuccessfully, obviously, because main character and all that. While he's trying to fight off his rival, and she climbs up further ahead, and he finally outwits and has Mr. Cena held hostage down below. So he climbs up to her, so now it's between the two of them, between Katie and Lewis. And they fight for a bit up there. And this is another part that, in terms of the rules, is what if the Jackpot person kills somebody else in the process? Because she does tug on one of his several grenade things that he has in his pocket. And I guess he blows up. So does that not... What does that mean? Because, like, I guess murder charges are, like, lifted temporarily for the whole thing of Jackpot. I don't know. Again, that rule is very unclear on top of the suicide one. But in the process of using said grenade, she drops down or falls down, but her fans decide to use one of their flags, as it were, to help hoist Katie up so that she will not fall to death. So she wins! They run out of time, and everyone is like, aw, shucks. So she gets the big paycheck, and she says how she's tired and doesn't want to be an actress anymore. And says how, and this is what she says in the movie, how wrestlers and YouTubers are the new thing for that, which you do technically get paid on YouTube. I mean, technically I do, but that's from one PayPal supporter, so, you know, it'd be nice to actually get paid on YouTube, like, a good chunk of money to have a living. If you've made it this far in the review, just saying. It'd be nice, because being a YouTuber is probably, I would argue, just as hard as being an actor. Especially if you came late to the game like I did. You know, in terms of, you know, being an actor, you know, once you have put your foot in the door and once you have a client that can help you search for jobs, I'm sure that becomes a lot less of a hassle to deal with, at least to a certain degree. There's none of that on YouTube unless you're already successful, as far as I'm concerned, or I'm aware of. And nobody on YouTube does this for people. Like, nobody on YouTube holds auditions, for example, for, like, a thing. Nobody collabs with a smaller YouTuber if they're big. That doesn't happen. I've never seen it happen. Historically, I've never seen it happen. I've been told it has happened once, and then I looked into it, and it turned out that the subscriber count jump was a little bit fabricated, as it turns out. So the number for me is still at 0. I've yet to have seen in the history of YouTube a bigger YouTuber collaborate with a smaller YouTuber. And when I mean smaller, I have a specific number in mind, less than 1,000 subscribers, because that's the arbitrary number YouTube decided to make it liable for you to be compensated, monetized on YouTube on top of watch time, among other things. So there's all that nonsense to deal with. And I'm also pretty low on subscribers, so it's pretty rough out here. Not gonna lie. Anywho. So, she and him split the difference, the 50-50, and she opens up a karate class, she opens up a school, and then he opens up like this restaurant that's TMNT based, and then he gets sued. or copyright suit or whatever. And then they sit on a yacht, as implied that she was gonna, she said, "You're gonna buy a yacht," or whatever, and then they end up both on a yacht. And that was the end of the movie Jackpot. So, I do think that this movie actually does have a little bit of promise, believe it or not. I know. There's some character work here. Again, being as objective as possible, I mentioned it. But I do think that there are quite a bit too many conveniences for this movie. Like I said, it's an interesting premise, and I do think I'd actually be interested in seeing a sequel or something. Maybe feature somebody new, in terms of the role. I don't know if they would keep John Cena, because he's sort of like the protector guy, but, Awkwafina, she's been on a lot of roles. She gets work. I mean, a lot of people say that she's not an actress, or she can't act, or whatever, but she's, she gets roles. What? Like, I'd want that. I'm sorry. Like, I'm jealous of Awkwafina. Like, I'm envious of that. Like, she gets work. Paper. She gets that paper money. What? Like, there's nothing else to say other than she gets work. So, that's on the people that don't get that work, I guess. I don't know. Anywho, in terms of a score, I think it'd be fair to give this a 6 out of 10 in terms of writing quality, as I mentioned. Like I said, there's some character work here, and I think that it's fine. But I do think that there are just too many conveniences in terms of how we're moving the plot forward for the characters. That could be definitely tightened up next time around, if there is a next time around. I'm not sure if this movie will even be successful, but I hope it is, because I think it's a fun premise. I think you could up the ante, as it were, in terms of the jackpot, which would make people more creative in terms of ways of getting the person who's in the jackpot, find more creative ways of how they escape, more creative ways to get them from location to location to make sure they're safe and whatnot, because I would assume that the next movie would follow, again, the next person surviving, I think, would be the sort of way to keep it going, sufficiently anyway. And that's my review of Jackpot. And if you ended up enjoying it, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my petition to help out smaller YouTubers. Second, to my PayPal, where you can help support me and my channel directly. And third, to my Discord server, you can join, collab, chill, do all that cool stuff. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.